I could sit here all afternoon under this big old oak tree, listening to the breeze gently rustling the leaves. Such a peaceful spot, and feels like the perfect place to sit and welcome you to the second episode of Lichen Loam. A very, very warm welcome to you. I hope that you're doing well. My name is Katie, my pronouns are they, them, and I am sitting where I live in South Wales in Bannau National Park. And I do worry about filming these outdoor segments on beautiful sunny days like this, that you might think that the weather is always like this in Wales, and is very much not the case. In fact, the weather is often, and more often, the complete opposite, absolute torrential rain. But obviously I can't go out taking my recording equipment in that weather, so I only get to take you out on these adventures with me on the days when it does look like this, and it is stunning. And I would say it almost makes up for all of the wet, windy and hideous weather that we get in between, because it makes you really appreciate the days when it's clear. The landscape opens up, you can see the mountains, you can see for miles. It's incredible. I can't believe that I didn't actually visit this national park before I came to look at the house which I now live in. I used to live on the edge of Dartmoor National Park in Devon, which is in the southwest of England, and through circumstances, one thing and another, here I am now based in South Wales, or Cymreig, and I couldn't be happier with where I've ended up living. I feel very fortunate that circumstances led me to such a beautiful place. Since I recorded my last video, I have done a fair amount of work on this cover for the Lichen Fancier cardigan. I've been spending a lot of time on the inkwork of these trees, really enjoying getting into all of the details and textures of the lichens on the bark. And it's taking me ages, and I don't really mind because I'm just thoroughly enjoying the process. But in the meantime, I also picked up another piece of work from before my break. It's a self-portrait that I had started and decided to finish and develop into a business card. I wanted to show you the evolution of this self-portrait before I start adding the colour. So this version at the top is one that I drew at least a year ago before my break, and I'd started inking it, but when I came back to look at it, there were a few things about it I wasn't happy with. It has my old glasses, different shape, I was wearing my hair a bit shorter back then. So I just decided to do an updated version rather than continuing to finish the one that I'd started. I sketched out a new version of essentially the same drawing with slightly longer, messier, curlier hair and my new hexagon glasses, which I love very much. I'm very attached to. And now I've drawn this up and it's pretty much finished and ready to paint. However, when I finished it, I thought, actually, I don't like that line of the mountains cutting through the top of my head. I wish I had drawn it higher, and you know, it's too late to change it now. But what I'm going to do when I paint is I've drawn a line of the mountains separately. So I will colour the hillside here, and then in post-production in Photoshop, I will be able to take that background and put it behind this image, and then I'll be able to choose exactly where I want the line of the mountains to be. I might decide that I want it behind my head after all, but it gives me the option. I'll be able to paint this and then add it as a separate layer. So that's the next stage, is to rub out these pencil lines that are behind the ink and start adding the colour. Unfortunately, when I did start adding the colour to this self-portrait, I ran into a bit of a roadblock. I don't know if it's because I have left, well, I'm sure it's because I've left this project for a long period of time. I'm not sure if it's because the surface of the paper has degraded. Often watercolour paper is coated with something called size, which makes it slightly less absorbent, and it impacts how the ink behaves on the paper. This probably sounds way too detailed, but to summarise, I'm finding that the ink is being sucked into the paper much more than I'm used to, and the colours are bleeding into each other. And it's really frustrating. It's not the way that I'm used to my materials behaving. And that, combined with coming back to painting and drawing after a year's break, it's just made the process not straightforward. But I'm trying to be grateful. I feel very fortunate, I don't know. I feel very glad that I decided to work on this self-portrait before diving in with the colours on the Lichen Fancier cardigan, because it looks like the same thing has happened to that paper. The inks are behaving in the same way. And it might have ruined that drawing that I've spent a lot of time working on the details of. So it's nice that I found this out through the self-portrait. And all is not lost, or all is never lost with creative things. There are always solutions to different problems. It's not ideal. So I carried on working on the colours of this a little bit, but soon realised that I wasn't going to get the results that I wanted by working into it on this piece of paper, whether it's something that's wrong with the paper or something's happened to my inks. My inks are all quite old. I don't know, and I've decided the best solution is to do the colouring digitally. Now, because I had already started colouring this portrait, I had to take a photograph and trace the black line work again with the Lichen Fancier cardigan, because I know that I'm going to face the same problem. I will be able to scan this line work that I've done on the paper. So I won't need to redo all of this intricate, detailed drawing, which is good news because I was starting to worry about that. But yeah, like I said, it's not ideal to have to colour this digitally. I did want this to be an illustration that I create all on paper. But it wasn't to be, and luckily using the iPad I've been getting used to colouring and drawing on there, and even though it's not my preferred way to work, I've been learning how to get results that I'm more pleased with, and at least I can finish this piece of art, this self-portrait, rather than discarding and throwing away and having to start again. Since I last saw you, I have finished knitting my socks, and actually about an hour into my walk, I've sat down to chat to you and my feet are wet, so I'm going to pop my socks on. There isn't much more to say about these socks than I said in my last video. They're a self-drafted pattern, and it's the first time I've done an asymmetrical toe to fit inside my barefoot hiking boots. And I'm really pleased with the fit. I'm really glad that I decided to do that. Oh, it does feel nice to put on a clean, dry pair of socks. Lovely. And they feel really good inside my boots. Let's get rid of my soggy socks. Once again, the wool that I used, well, yarn, it's a blend of wool and cotton and polyamide. And it's from Lang Yarns. I found it in my local yarn shop. I really enjoyed working with it. I've not worked with a cotton blend before, but I'm pleased with how it looks, how it feels, and the 2x2 rib means that they hug my feet really nicely. So yeah, really, really pleased with these socks. They're wearing pretty well so far. I've worn them on a couple of hikes, and yeah, certainly right now appreciating a new warm dry pair of socks. I wonder how much further into the walk they'll last before I have to swap them out though. Now, the thing I've discovered about becoming someone who knits on one project at a time is it puts way more pressure on me when I finish a project to decide what that next project is going to be. I'm used to just having another project that's on the go, or another 5 to just pick up and carry on moving. But there's something about finishing a project and not having another one that's ongoing to then start the process of swatching and before even swatching, deciding what to make, that I'm finding surprisingly overwhelming. And this is a new experience to me because I've never been someone who knits one project at a time. And what I found is that it created a kind of a real discomfort and overwhelm about making the decision. So what I've got here is 3 swatches that I made for a potential new project. And in the end, I didn't cast on any of them. I ended up picking up an old unfinished project, but we'll get onto that shortly. I thought I'd tell you about the swatches and my thought process and why I couldn't make up my mind, even though it hasn't ultimately resulted in a new cast on, although it might do. So the yarn is a beautiful silver coloured Leicester Longwool that I picked up at a local sheep festival back in September. It's grown in Wales. It's from the shop Gwlân Cymreig in Newcastle Emlyn, the Welsh wool shop. And yeah, I couldn't resist it. It's this lovely natural silver colour, and being a long wool, it's got a lovely drape and such a gorgeous halo as well. I really fell in love with this yarn. When I walked into the sheep tent at the festival, it was the first yarn I looked at, and after visiting all the vendors and stalls, it was the one I went back and decided to buy. And I bought 4 100-gram skeins of 4-ply, so a generous amount for a vest or a scant amount for a jumper, which is part of my problem. I think I bought a slightly strange quantity of yarn, but I was just agonising over what to make. I'm distracted by the cawing of that crow. I'm not sure if it will come out on the recording, but it's really loud right above me. Hi, sorry, I'm in your woods. I hope you don't mind. I'm just chatting about knitting. Is that okay? Thanks. So, where were we? This swatch is the first one that I knitted. This is a textured pattern. It's a mixture of cables in stocking stitch and moss stitch, which I've never seen before. It's from a Rowan pattern by Martin Story. I think it's called Salford. I'll correct myself on screen if that's wrong. And it's designed for a really chunky wool, and I just wondered what it would look like to swatch that cable pattern in a lighter weight wool. And I'm really pleased with it. I think it looks really nice. I do think the halo sort of obscures the stitch definition a little bit. So that was my reservation. That's why I didn't cast on what I was imagining to self-draft a vest with this cable pattern all over. But I wasn't sure, and I also thought maybe my gauge was a bit loose. So, yeah, anyway, that was the first swatch. And then the second swatch, thinking that my gauge was a bit loose, I cast on with a much smaller needle and just did stocking stitch. And I actually much prefer this fabric. I think it's, it's a tighter fabric. It's still got a fair amount of drape. It's not losing the qualities of the wool by being too tight. Sometimes when you knit too tight, it just creates a fabric that stands up on its own and feels a bit like cardboard. It's definitely not doing that. It's really lovely. And I can feel that over time, the fibres are gonna meld together and become sort of felty. I think it's gonna be gorgeous. So I think this is the gauge I want to work at, but I couldn't decide on a pattern. I couldn't figure out what to do. I wanted something that really emphasised the drapey qualities of the yarn, but I didn't have enough to make a jumper at this smaller gauge. So anyway, I was fussing. I couldn't figure out what to do. In the meantime, I cast on a third swatch, and even at this distance, you can probably tell that this is a completely different gauge and looks perhaps like a completely different yarn. This is made from 3 strands of the Leicester Longwool held together with a 4th strand. Actually, the 4th strand is a dyed yarn, a dyed Wensleydale from Nellie and Eve, another local yarn producer and dyer to me. And yeah, it's really, I don't know, something about the pangolin jumper and marling all of my different colours together. I got really into the potential of holding different yarns together to create basically different yarns, different effects. I really love this. But again, I don't think I've got enough yarn to make even a vest with 3 strands held together, unless it's plain stocking stitch, but I wanted something a little bit more interesting going on. So all in all, I deferred the decision and I haven't cast anything on in this beautiful new yarn yet. So I discovered there's an obvious advantage to being someone who used to be a polyamorous knitter with many different projects on the go and became a monogamous knitter, is I do have a portfolio of projects that are unfinished that I can choose from. I went through my selection of unfinished projects. I did frog a couple. Sometimes you just know. You just know when it's been set aside for so long, you just know you're not going to finish it. So I did let go of a couple, but one that I couldn't let go of because it was so almost finished is this one. And because I'm on a slightly smaller needle than I ideally would be, it's going to look like a crumpled up jellyfish, but it is in fact a huge triangular shawl that I was working on before my break. And I set aside because it was overwhelming. So this is the Madara shawl by Inese, and it was originally published in Amarisu magazine, I think in an issue spring and summer from 2022. Again, I'll correct myself on the screen if I'm not right about that. The sample is worked in a pale grey and a yellow, which is beautiful, but obviously I needed to choose some more woodland and nature-inspired colours. And I'm working with the same blend of fibre, so it's a Blueface Leicester and Masham, but 2 different dyers. So the main colour, this beautiful kind of greenish bronze, is from Zakami yarns, and it's a 4-ply. And the green contrast colour is from Gull rock fibres, so it's naturally dyed, and that's a DK, so it's creating a kind of texture variation as well, which isn't part of the pattern. It was just an accident. I thought that the 2 yarns were the same and they were not, but it's working okay. I mean, it's a little bit wobbly, but I think a good block will fix it. And I am about 10 rows from the end of this project, and I'll be honest with you, the reason I set it aside for a year, maybe more than a year, is I think there are knitwear designs that are construction first or designed for the experience of the knitter, and there are designs that are in service of the design and you sort of wrangle the knitting to do what you want. I am that kind of designer, which is why I designed a mushroom pullover that requires you in some places to strand 3 colours at a time. I don't enjoy stranding 3 colours at a time, but there was no other way to create that mushroom motif, and I felt like the look of the finished jumper was worth suffering a few horrible rows like that. Perhaps if you've knitted that jumper, maybe you don't agree with me, and I'm sorry. But this shawl is like that. It's very much knitted in service of a design concept without necessarily... There are some long rows that involve stranded colourwork, and obviously it's in rows, so you're doing your stranded colourwork on the right side and the wrong side, and it's much more difficult to do stranded colourwork on a purl row. But what's even more difficult than doing stranded colourwork on a purl row is doing stranded colourwork on a row that has both knits and purls, so you can't get into a flow with the knitting. You'll notice I am not actually knitting whilst talking to you about this project, because it's impossible catching the floats. There are some really long floats. It's just awkward and time consuming. It's like taking me an hour to knit a row. I mean, we're also at over 400 stitches a row at this point. And that's without even talking about the rows that had these contrasting bobbles, which, if you look closely at my wrong side, has given me hundreds of ends to weave in, bringing me back horrors of the pangolin jumper. So yeah, I want the finished object, and that is why I'm forging ahead with this shawl, because I've got so far and I'm so close. Honestly, 10 rows to go, and maybe even less, because actually I'm really quite low on my contrasting colour. It might not look it, but that is only 23 grams, and the rows are getting up towards 500 stitches. I'm using 5 grams a row, so what's that? That's fewer than 5 rows, and there are 10 left in the pattern. So I'm for sure going to run out of yarn. So I'm going to need to think about something creative to do with that. Try not to worry about that for the moment. And I would like to tell you how satisfying I'm finding it, picking up an old project and finishing it rather than casting on something new. But the truth is, I'm finding it a bit of a slog. There is something more shiny and exciting about casting on a new project. So I feel slightly disappointed that I didn't get to, that I couldn't settle on a particular project I wanted to cast on. And yeah, knowing that I will face the same problem when I finish this shawl in 10 rows time. So yeah, this is it's like a new chapter for me as a knitter. It feels very unfamiliar. I'm not quite sure how to manage these feelings yet, but it's interesting to observe how changing my patterns of making, and it's certainly working for managing my overwhelm. I'm not feeling overwhelmed by my quantity of unfinished projects, but whether it's attending to my need to be inspired and excited about my knitting, I'm not sure. So yeah, maybe I need to work on that a bit more. The more time I spend sitting here by this dead tree stump telling you about my knitting, the more fungi I am seeing. At first glance, I thought there weren't many mushrooms happening in the woods today. It's mid-November and it's turned cold. It's frosty this morning. And the first initial flourish of fungi that came up in October when the weather turned damp and autumn was here and they all came out, that is over. So I'm having to look a bit harder to find them these days, but they're definitely still here. And yeah, I guess that leads me nicely into this edition of the Fungus Report. The fungi are definitely not as colourful and showy here, whether it's these woods or the being slightly later in the year, but I am finding some really interesting ones. There's just this twig I've picked up in front of me has some, they are really slimy, lovely. And there's some other slimy ones on this twig in front of me. All kinds of different things. There's tiny little white ones amongst the moss here. Maybe those are my favourites. I'm not sure. It's so hard to choose. The more I look, the more there are. So I think this has to be my fungus of the day. This is candle snuff fungus. I think presumably it's called because it looks like the wick of a candle after it's been blown out. And I was reading about it and I learned that it depends on dead wood. So a place like this, stumps of trees, is perfect for it. And it's kind of chalky when you touch it. It's leaving white dust on my fingers. I also read that it's bioluminescent, and obviously I'm not going to see that in this beautiful sunny weather that I've come out in, but I'm going to do some further reading on that and see what conditions or what time of year it might bioluminesce, if that's even true. Yeah, that's very cool, very exciting. As I'm peering around the back of the stump here, chatting about the candle snuff fungus, I've also found these sort of club-shaped dark brown things. No idea what they are, never seen those before. That's pretty exciting. And then there's also something down here. There, that's definitely something fungal happening as well. It's got a lovely little furry bit there. No idea what that is either. Oh, and finally a mushroom at the same tree stump. So I'm still sort of milling around the same spot where I saw the candle snuff fungus, and I found this beautiful sort of brown coffee coloured mushroom. It's very, very tactile. I'm really enjoying the sort of rubbery feel of this one. Yeah, gorgeous. No idea what it is, but it's beautiful. I take it back. I think I said that the candle snuff fungus was going to be my fungus of the day, but the prize has to go to this magnificent collection of jelly ears. I have never seen so many in one place. There's absolutely loads of them. And I walked past them on my first pass. I was just filming a shot of me walking in the woods, and then I saw them. And I'm not certain. I believe that these are edible. Oh my God, they're so soft and lovely to touch. They're amazing. I think that people make like gummy sweets out of them. I'm not going to do that. They're so beautiful. I can't pick them. They're obviously very, very happy living here on this fallen log. I'm just going to maybe lie here and stroke them for a bit longer. They feel amazing. I think the reason I didn't see them at first is I was coming from the other side, so I didn't see the light shining through them. But from this side, I love how the sunlight, the low autumn sunlight shining through them, is giving them this beautiful glowing orange colour. They're just stunning. I can't believe it. There's been so much dead wood good for fungus on this walk. It's been incredible. I think I read somewhere that in the past managed woodlands were cleared of any fallen logs to keep them presentable, and these days woodland trusts and woodland management is about leaving the dead wood to rot and to provide a habitat for all these kinds of amazing different beings. I've just left the main woods. You can see it's a bit more open. I've got mountains in sight now, but there's this huge fallen oak branch off this tree above, and obviously I'm looking at this kind of brownish orange fluffy spongy thing, but really close to me there's tiny little grey ones poking up through the moss. It's just incredible. There's so much to see the more you look. I'm just finishing my walk. It's been an absolutely bumper day for fungus in the woods, even though It was a bit of a slow start. I was worried I wasn't going to find very much. The more I've looked, the more I found, and I'm just finishing this day with whatever these are growing all over, whatever this stump is. They are kind of brown with a white edge, and they are oozing some kind of red, bloody looking sap. And they're kind of disgusting, but also kind of amazing. And there are so many of them here. I am loving them. The great thing about recording it outside is I get to stop and show you some of my knitted accessories. I feel like I don't often talk about these little projects on my videos because I'm not wearing them indoors when I'm recording in my studio. Obviously they're designed for outdoors, and I need to be wearing them to be reminded to tell you about them. And I think it's always nice to see not just knitwear projects in progress and, you know, celebrating the finishing of them, but also to see them carrying on and living their life. They're designed to be useful things, and certainly I wear them. I wear the things I've made every single day. Hello, there's another crow hanging out with us. I'm really bothering the crows this morning, or maybe I'm not bothering them. Maybe they're happy to see me. I don't really know. Hi, I hope you're okay. So where shall we start? I should start with my mittens. I feel like I've been getting a lot of use out of those this morning, although I can see the tips here very much need darning, like urgently. I'm not sure they're going to make it to the end of this walk, so I'll put them in my mending pile straight away when I get home. These are the Handtak mittens by Védís Jónsdóttir. They are on the Ístex website. They're knitted in Léttlopi Icelandic yarn, and I love them. The Icelandic yarn is the warmest for mittens that I've ever experienced. Makes sense. It's from Iceland. I love them, and obviously the stranded colourwork creates a double thickness fabric, so they're really warm and toasty. You can see I've got red for my right hand and blue for my left. The pattern doesn't actually have a specific right hand and left hand. They're the same, but I found the more I've worn them, the wool has kind of shaped to my hand. So I do always respect the red for right and blue for left, because it helps me pick up the gloves that fit that specific hand best. Also, I did the different colours because I made these mittens out of scraps. I've never actually knitted a garment in Léttlopi, although I feel like I should. I feel like it would be the warmest thing ever. But I really wanted to make these mittens using the recommended yarn, so I asked my knitting group if they had ever knitted anything in Lopi and had any scraps, and several members of the group donated little ends of balls. So these mittens are entirely made out of my friends' leftovers, which is really lovely, and they give me good memories of my lovely knitting group back in Devon as well. Yeah, that's my mittens. My hat you will probably recognise. This is my own design, my fairy ring hat, and this is made in yarns from John Arbon Textiles. There's some Exmalt swap balls in the dark colours, and then I used their knit by numbers for the red and their Appledore for the green. Love this colour green. The closer you look at it, it's got all different shades in it. It reminds me of moss out on Dartmoor. So again, this is a hat that has lots of lovely Devon memories knitted up into it as well. And I'm wearing a shawl, which I'm going to take off and try not to bang the microphone too much. So this shawl is a very sentimental project. I knitted this shawl as a gift for my grandma before she died. My grandma was the person who taught me to knit, so it felt like a real evolution in my knitting journey to knit something and be able to give it to her. And when she passed away, it came back to live with me, and I'm very attached to it. And I also get a lot of wear out of it, even though really flowery lace is not necessarily a style that I gravitate towards. I find because it's lace, it traps lots of air, and it also packs really small. Like it fits really nicely in my hiking bag, so it's really practical, other than the colour. The colour isn't super practical, but anyway, it is what it is. It's extremely lightweight. I think it weighs less than 200 grams. It's a free pattern called the Echo Flower Shawl. The designer's name escapes me, but I'll pop it up on the screen for you. This was only the second lace thing I ever knitted, and it was a bit of a learning curve. It's got some nups in here, which I'd never done before, but yeah, it's one that I wear a lot because I find it so practical, but I also love that it's full of memories of my grandma. The yarn is another John Arbon Textiles yarn, but it is a discontinued one. I picked it up in the bargain bin at one of their mill open weekends. I think perhaps the first mill open weekend I ever went to. They had some ends of lines and discontinued yarns, so it's not one that they make anymore, but it's just a beautiful natural undyed white British wool, and a shawl that I get a lot of wear out of. I would like it to be known that I came home and mended those mittens, not straight away, a couple of days later, but I am pleased that I did it. Often when I intend to mend things, they go into a mending pile and they can stay there for an indeterminate amount of time, from months to even years. So it's testament to how much I love these mittens that I took the time almost straight away to come and mend them. And I took a bit of time actually to choose which yarns to use to mend them. I wanted the mending to be not completely invisible because I knew it never would be, but I wanted it to be in keeping with the colour choices of the mittens. So I picked out a grey yarn for the warp. This is a 5-ply Gansey yarn. I think it came from Black Yarns. This is just an oddball that I've had lying around in my stash. This is one of the things I love about darning, is you can use up lots of little bits and pieces. So I used that dark grey for the warp, and then for the weft I picked Tuku wool sock yarn, which is a wool and nylon blend, so it will add a little bit of strength.
and I picked out two colours, a navy to go on the blue mitten and a red to go on the red mitten. And actually, now that the darn is finished, I think if you didn't know these had been mended, you wouldn't notice straight away. It's really in keeping with the mittens. I'm really, really pleased with how this mend turned out. Oh, I've just put my mitten down in the mud. I've been getting progressively more and more muddy throughout this walk. My hand knit socks actually fared pretty well. They stayed dry through some serious mud, like as high as my boots, but they did finally when I forded that stream just now, the water has most definitely breached my boots. I have got soggy feet, so it's time to change up to a pair of waterproof socks for the rest of my walk. But yeah, that's all for this video. I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who supports my work financially. I have a Patreon which you can join as a free member and you get early access to these videos. But if you are willing to make a monthly commitment to a small donation, then you also get access to extra vlogs. I've been sharing sort of more unpolished studio vlogs which give you a bit more of a view into my day-to-day creative life rather than these kind of bigger, more presentable videos, shall we say. It's fun to make both kinds, and I really love getting to share those behind the scenes bits with folks who support me over on Patreon. If Patreon isn't for you, then there are loads of other ways to support me. I have a coffee where you can buy me a coffee. I don't actually drink coffee, but you could buy me a cuppa. I have a shop where you can buy my illustrated goodies, my knitwear designs, and so on. But if financial support isn't something accessible for you, then you can also support me by liking this video, letting people know that you liked it, sharing it. If you know of someone who loves the fungi as much as me, yeah, maybe let them know, and that's a really supportive thing that you can do as well. That's all. Just listening to that breeze through the oak leaves again. What a delightful walk this has been. Thank you so much for sharing this visit with me, and I will see you soon. Bye.